Hi, my name is Kelly Schmiller. I'm 31 years old. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a television producer originally from the Caledon area. So I identify as non-binary / transmasculine, which means I was assigned female at birth, but I don't identify with being female. Although I also don't identify with being male. So I say that I'm trans because I'm not cisgender, because I was assigned female at birth, but I don't identify that way, but I also don't identify as a trans man. So I usually say I'm transmasculine, and non-binary is very comfortable for me. When I was like 3 years old-ish was kind of the first time I started vocalizing to people, specifically my parents, that I wasn't a girl. It just didn't feel right from the get-go. And I think, in the 90s, people say, you're just a tomboy, or, you'll grow out of it, it's just a phase. And I'm sure people say that now. But I had that in the back of my mind from literally 3 years old all the way up until I figured out who I was at 27. And it never really went away. It helped, I guess, a little bit that people were accepting of me, not wearing girl clothes and playing with girl toys. And as a kid, people were just like, yeah, she's a tomboy. And that just never really felt exactly right for me. And I went back and forth on maybe I'm trans, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm trans, maybe I'm not, because I didn't have the representation of non-binary people until fairly recently. I thought if you're trans, you have to be one or the other. You have to be a trans woman or a trans man. And so I kept thinking, well, I'm not a man. That doesn't feel fully right for me. So I kept just putting it out of my mind, being like, so I guess I'm not trans. I can't be if I'm not a man. So it wasn't until probably like 5 or 6 years ago that I really started understanding what non-binary was. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that totally is me. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, I finally figured it out. I love now that as an adult, I can be this and be myself and show kids like me that there is another option. And it's amazing being able to live authentically as myself. Growing up, people just sort of assumed, oh, you're a tomboy, which I guess I don't think people really use that term much anymore. It was sort of just a word we threw at girls who presented more boyish. And I think that a lot of my female friends also, like now, said as a kid I was a tomboy. But it doesn't actually mean anything in terms of your identity. It's more of just like, anyone can like trucks and soccer and, Batman and Power Rangers, which is what I kind of was into as a kid. And those are just things that people like and, express themselves, but it doesn't have anything to do with their identity. And being trans is like this, it's a piece of you, it's a part of you. People ask, how do you know you're trans? Well, how do you know you're straight? Or how do you know you're gay? Or how do you know you don't like mushrooms? You just know. That's just something that's a part of you. And so, yeah, I think one is an identity and one is just sort of an expression of interest. So coming out was, I think a lot of people have these stories of they were scared to come out or they were worried how people would respond. I didn't really have that. It was more so just trying to figure out what that meant for me going forward after telling people. I wasn't ever really scared about the actual act of telling people. The first person I told, I think, was one of my best friends. And she kind of helped me figure it out altogether. And then I had a phone call with my mom. And that went pretty well. We just sort of talked things out, and at the time I still wasn't like fully 100% sure with what the language was in terms of pronouns and identity. But I ended up texting a bunch of family and friends once I told my mom, and then I made an Instagram video. A friend of mine helped me edit that and put it out sort of publicly, just sort of saying like, I'm not a girl. I don't know yet what the process is going to be here for me in terms of transitioning. But I know 100% that I'm not a girl, so she, her is no longer something that I identify with. And everybody was wonderful. I had zero pushback, which was kind of what I was expecting, but you know, most people don't get that, so I'm really lucky. Coming out didn't really change my life all that much, honestly. I think because everybody sort of just knew who I was. Like, I haven't changed really. I mean, physically, my outside has changed a bit to match more the inside, but even after I had top surgery, almost every single person I talked to, including my mom, said, "Oh, you just look more like you now." And that was huge for me, because that's how I felt when I looked in the mirror. I was like, there I am. And every other person who said that, I was like, see? Like, this is who I've always been. Now I get to match that, which is cool. So my life has improved, but my life wasn't really bad before, I guess. So yeah, it's been great, really. The only real challenging part about, you know, just being my authentic self is that we live in a world that isn't set up for a non-binary person. Everything is very binary. You go into, you know, bathrooms, it's male, female. You go into change rooms, male, female. You go to, even there's gyms, like there's all women's gyms or there's all men's classes of whatever. And I don't feel like now I fit in either fully, but I also feel like I can kind of float between them. So it's this sort of weird thing where I just don't feel fully accepted yet as a non-binary person. And in a lot of cases, it's not like on purpose. But you know, even language, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's like, except, so that's not me, you know? So there's that, there's the challenge of just not being included necessarily. But I think we're starting to move forward to be more inclusive that way. So in terms of if I have like a guiding principle in life, I would say foundationally kindness is sort of the thing I build off of. Positivity and inclusivity, and just, you know, being open-minded and kind to everybody, because if you're not kind, I feel like it's kind of a waste of the very short life we all get, so yeah. So I work in television, I'm a TV producer. And our industry is actually quite progressive at this point, which has been great to see. And I'm very fortunate with the company I work for. Coming out to them was, again, same with coming out to everybody else in my life. They were kind of like, okay, yep, that makes sense. That feels right for you. And you know, the language was hard to get everybody to transition to they, them pronouns. It is a bit trickier. But within the industry, it's quite inclusive. And now what's really cool is, like, on all of our paperwork, we have pronouns, and everybody's just, and email addresses and stuff like that. And everybody's just so much more aware of it, I think, which is really nice. And so I feel fortunate that I'm in an industry where I get to help create these stories and include people like me in these characters and in these stories to try to teach people and show people that, like, we're just normal people and this is a part of our lives. And I think that's really cool. So one of the other kind of tricky parts about being non-binary and coming out was the use of the they, them pronoun thing. It's funny because I have, like, half the people are like, oh, it's too hard. Why can't we just come up with a whole new pronoun for you? And then there's other people who are like, these neo-pronouns, I can't get behind them. Like, let's just use they, them. So there's definitely a different camp out there of what people like, but I don't find it that difficult to adjust to, so I find it a little bit frustrating when other people find it hard, because it's really just a neutral. Like, we've always used it, and there's this argument that drives me nuts when people say, oh, it's a plural, I can't, you know, all I can think of is it's a plural pronoun. It is, but it also is a singular, and it always has been. And I've had teachers say to me, oh, I just can't get behind the they, them singular thing. And I'm like, okay, as like a teaching professional, you should know that they is a singular use, because it's just a neutral, it's just an unknown. So two examples I usually use is the whole wallet thing. Someone, you know, picks a wallet up off the ground, there's no ID in it, and you're like, oh no, I found a wallet. This person, they are going to be so sad, I should get this back to them. Or, you know, someone cuts you off in traffic and you don't see the driver, you're not going to assume, so you say, they cut me off, they are a jerk, you know? So it's always been used as an unknown singular. It frustrates me having the same conversation over and over and over again about the whole they-them thing. And I just, like, I've met so many now non-binary people, and 9 times out of 10, it's easy because I see them as them. Like I see them as a neutral person, you know? And if someone says to me like I'm non-binary, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, that checks out. And I don't see he or she in my head after that. So I would like to hope that people see that with me, but it's not usually the case. Growing up, I feel like everybody sort of thinks of the future and tries to picture themselves as an older person, either, you know, with kids or without kids, or what their job looks like, or, you know, just even as like an old person. And I kind of struggled with what society wanted for me to picture and like what I actually pictured. And there was this sort of constant, like, those things don't align. Like I've always loved kids and I've always worked with kids, and I thought, oh, that just makes sense that I should have kids. But picturing myself pregnant and like giving birth to a kid, I was just like, no, like that isn't what I want. And then also picturing myself as like an old woman, I was like, no, that's not that's not what I want. And so that was kind of difficult. And then once I sort of figured out who I was and started transitioning, now I can picture what I'm going to look like older, and that totally aligns with what I want, which is great. And I still would like to have kids, but just not from my own body. So adoption, maybe surrogacy, but yeah, things have definitely changed since I have transitioned, and I see the future a lot differently. And it's way clearer now because it's what I want and not what I think I should want. My hope for the future, specifically for the queer and trans community, would be acceptance overall and inclusion overall, and just to stop like the violence and the hate, really, because unfortunately the minority who do hate us and don't understand us and want to see us go away are much louder than those who are supporting us. So my hope would be that allies can step up and be louder and help us make the changes we need to make to protect everybody. There was just a young non-binary person killed recently, a couple weeks ago, and it's just, and nobody did anything about it, and it's only coming out now, and we're gonna keep seeing that, which is not fair. So my hope is that you know, adults can step up and protect these kids so they get to be adults, because, you know, we're not trying to make cis children trans, we're just trying to make sure that trans children get to be adults. So that's my hope. The support isn't there for any of us, but I think they're starting with, what's crazy to me is they have this whole guise of protect the children, but they're not protecting the children, they're harming the children. They're taking away their rights, they're taking away their books, their education, you're harming kids, that's all you're doing. And I don't really know to what end. I'm not sure what they're going for exactly, but yeah, it needs to stop. So I think if I were in a room with myself 10 years ago, knowing what I know now, I would say you're on the right track. Just keep living authentically as yourself. Don't listen to what other people say. You know who you are, and yeah, you're on the right path. Because I wouldn't change anything, honestly. Like, I do wish that I'd had the representation that I can be now for other people as a kid, but honestly, everything that I've done and gone through in my life has led me here. So yeah, I would just say just keep on the same track. You'll figure it out. And then if I were to speak with myself 10 years into the future, reminding them who we are now, I would say embrace the body you have and the health you have, because it's not going to be ever as good as it is in the moment. And I always took for granted how good of shape I was in, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and I see pictures and I'm like, you thought you were fat? Like, what? It's not, oh. So yeah, just don't take for granted what you have. I know in high school I remember thinking how fat I was, because like one of my best friends was so skinny, and I look back and I was like, oh, it's like a size 4. Like, really? So small. Yeah. A friend of mine who I met, this is sort of a convoluted story how I met her, but we connected through a Broadway show in the summer of last year. She's originally from the UK but lives in Florida now, and we just hit it off and we've become really good friends. She bought me this t-shirt. Actually, she got me another one too. I'm gonna get the phrase of that one wrong, but as soon as I got this shirt, I was like, that is so, like, that's just the message that I want to always share with people, because I feel like not living authentically yourself and you know, being apologetic about who you are is just sad. And it's, you know, yeah, you only have one life, so you may as well just be you, because you're the only one you have. And I love this shirt. It's one of my favorite shirts because it's so simple, but it's so impactful. And actually, I was just in England last week, and there was a man sitting outside asking for money, and I gave him a couple pounds. And he stopped me and he's like, "Wait, I want to read your shirt." And I was wearing it. And he said, "That's a great shirt," and gave me props. And he's like, "That really just made my day." And I was like, "See, like, that's just, it's such a simple message." But yeah, so I love it. I think one of the things that sort of not necessarily held me back, but worried me when I was starting the transition was, will I be able to find love? Will I be lovable? Because I always have been attracted to and have only ever dated cis men, specifically cis men. And you know, as someone who, I had a big chest before, and I dressed more femininely to attract those partners, but always kind of felt inauthentic doing that. I worried once I transitioned, will I be able to find a man who could love me in now this body and as this person? And my now ex-boyfriend, he showed me that I can be loved, and that that none of this matters, because I'm still the same person. So I've had to sort of readjust my thinking and who I'm looking for, because I dated just like straight men for the longest time. But then, yeah, dating a queer man, I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense, and this feels way more authentic because he sees me as me, and that was really relieving. So I think for other trans people watching, if you've ever had that thought of like, oh, I can't be lovable after I transition, you absolutely can. Well, I don't drink coffee, so it's not that. What gets me out of bed in the morning? You know, I really like life. I've been surrounded by great people my whole life, and they make life worth living, I feel like. And I often see people struggle with getting out of bed in the morning, and I've been very fortunate that I've never struggled with that. So yeah, I mean, the sun helps. We've had not a lot of sunny days, and the last few days the sun has helped me get up. But yeah, generally I love life. So every day I wake up and I'm like, another day, let's go. So if I could say one thing to people watching, it would be that trans people are just people who happen to be trans. It's not like the only thing about us. It's actually a very insignificant thing about us, to be honest. It's, you know, the same as having blue eyes versus brown eyes. You're either trans or you're cis. Like, it's just a part of who you are, and it shouldn't be scary. And I hope that it's more accepted and more viewed as just an attribute about somebody, because we're just people.